Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's happening. California has started ordering meat plants to again shut down. Migrant workers are walking off of the job across Michigan due to the new mandatory COVID-19 testing there that went into effect this week. With meat plants shutting down and farms without harvest labor, we are looking at the engineered shutdown of the U.S. food production system. And a lot of this is happening globally. Let's talk about it. I'm Christian, and this is the Ice Age Farmer broadcast.
Following a state emergency order requiring baseline COVID-19 testing for certain agriculture workers in Michigan, a number of seasonal and migrant laborers at several Michigan operations did not come back into work this week.
And they're pulling out of the state and they're just leaving because they don't want to be a part of this. That's the big concern. I mean, of course, it's affecting all of us.
It's difficult because I'm down personnel.
And Merced County this week ordered Foster Farms processing plant in California to be shut down due to COVID-19 outbreak there. We read, quote, "The Merced County Health Department ordered the Foster Farms Livingston facility to shut down over the largest and most severe COVID-19 outbreak in Merced County. At least 358 employees have tested positive, according to their letter. Quote, Foster Farms poultry operation in Livingston has experienced an alarming spread of COVID-19 among the workers. Nobody can ignore the facts. It's time to hit the reset button on Foster Farms Livingston plant." Well, hit the reset button is an interesting turn of phrase, don't you think? It sounds a lot like, no, it couldn't be. Let's see who is saying that after all. Oh, it's California Attorney General Xavier Becerra. California Attorney General, don't be fooled. That is a well-connected position. Someone in that seat is an acolyte of the New World Order. After all, Kamala Harris was just sitting there a mere few years ago before she went off into the Senate. So this gentleman, Becerra, is absolutely, when he says we're hitting the reset button on our meatpacking factories here in California, that is a tip of the hat to the folks, the globalists at the World Economic Forum and their great reset, the blitzkrieg of totalitarian agendas that have been in the works for decades now but are all launching forward right now given the pandemic. That is a wink of the eye to the Rockefellers over at the Rockefeller Foundation and their new Reset the Table plan that describes a complete reformatting and technocratic takeover and no free market of the U.S. food system here to out. This echoes the EU farm to fork policy and the same around the world at this point. But when we see Becerra say we need to hit that reset button on California's agriculture, boy, it's not even coded. It is a direct reference. He's letting you know that this is part of playing into that agenda to take total control. And it is. So this is going to continue. I hope this letter helps you understand that you have a legal obligation to comply with my orders and my guidance. We read down here a little bit of context. On June 29th, we had given some recommendations, some guidance to Foster Farms, but we sent in Cal OSHA in the beginning of the month, August, and we noticed that they hadn't taken our advice to implement stringent social distancing and drop their production down to unprofitable levels. So now we're just going to close them down. That's the only option at this point. This is something that we can expect to continue. After all, this is why Gruesome Newsom sent out farm strike teams to do exactly what we're reading here of the Foster Farms factory at all of the smaller farms and operations across the Central Valley. Now, a similar story is playing out in Michigan, where Whitmer, as of Monday, had instituted mandatory COVID-19 testing for all migrant farm workers, which is already pretty sketchy. It's very divisive because that means, as we'll read down here, that only Latinos have to take the tests. There are Americans who don't because they're not considered migrant farm workers. Boy, if we can just inject racism and all these other concepts in there, just muddy the waters as much as we want, maybe no one will notice that we're shutting down the food supply. From Michigan Farm News, quote, "Dozens of Michigan farm workers are leaving unpicked fields and orchards. They say it's driven by the state's new emergency order requiring mandatory testing for COVID-19. We hear from some blueberry farms like True Blueberry Management, who lost 150 employees that just left to go work in states where they didn't have mandatory COVID-19 testing. In Bangor, another story, 14 employees left a heritage blueberry farm there. In fact, it's so widespread, quote, everyone is affected, according to Manuel Morales, who went on to say, they don't want to do the test. I don't want to do the test. I was in Florida earlier in this year. We didn't have to do the test. Why do we have to in Michigan? Well, because of Whitmer. Because she wants us to, and it's only Latinos. Why? I work with American people. They're not getting tested. You see how ridiculous this is? What kind of just so divisive. Of course, there has been an appeal, and then a higher court has already overturned that appeal, meaning that they are keeping this mandatory testing of farm workers there. There are many advocacy groups I went through in my last video, and I gave you advice. Just go to a search engine and check your state and then farm worker COVID-19 protections, and you will probably see that there are advocacy groups working to institute mandatory COVID-19 tests to protect the farm workers. Only now that it's happening, and now that the farm workers are leaving when that happens, we can tell that's not what they want. They're telling us, we don't want testing. We're leaving because of the testing. So this whole pretense is now shot. It's dead in the water. And we can tell that what's going on here is a shutdown of our food supply. This has nothing to do with protecting farm workers from COVID-19. This has to do with shutting down the meat plants in California, hitting the reset button on our food supply. It's stunning. It's just stunning. What do they expect us to eat when they shut down the meat plants and close the farms? Are we supposed to eat air? Yeah, that's actually what they recommend. One of the World Economic Forum's portfolio companies for 2020 is airprotein.com, and they do synthesize a protein-like substance by scrubbing carbon dioxide out of the air and then running it through some synthetic fermentation culture-like thing. It's just disgusting. I mean, it's fascinating, but this is not natural, real food. This is synthetic nonsense that they're telling us we're going to be eating going forward. Here's another of the World Economic Forum's 2020 portfolio companies, Yappa and their protein crisps. Oh, rethinking snacks for good. Well, what's a Yappa crisp? It's delicious. It's chef-composed crisps with rescued veggies, spent grains, and upcycled chicken breast. Wait a minute, that sounds like trash. It is trash. Christian, we're super excited. We're all going to be doing this for good, and it's made by a chef. It's on Indiegogo here because it's some teenager's brilliant idea in his basement of how to save the world from excessive food waste. And so it's an indie project, and we can go make it happen. Maybe give the guy $20. No, wait a minute. What's this down here? No, it's not. It's not indie at all. That's a ruse, complete mask on top of what's actually going on. Yappa crisps, we read here on the Indiegogo funding site, stunning, were created by the Tyson Innovation Lab. That's right. It's a multi-billion-dollar multinational company who was in an advisory role to the World Economic Foundation in crafting their policies to overturn the global food supply. Tyson, as we know, has invested heavily, hundreds of millions of dollars over the past decade into fake meat, both plant-based meals and synthetic lab-grown meat, as you can see here with an Israeli startup that they're funding. Tyson's knows what's going on, and they're in on the game, and they're ahead of the game, and they're pushing forward that meatless agenda, that ending of animal agriculture. And there's other upcycled food coming on the market right now, all of it endorsed by the World Economic Foundation and the United Nations. You saw the United Nations yesterday say, hey, Impossible Foods, great job, guys, way to go. You should definitely be eating that dog food over there. Here from regrained.com, we take spent grains that were already used to make beer, and then we dry them out and we do some stuff to it, and we sell it back to you. It's upcycled grains now. We call it regrained. Or hey, we can go the other way, actually. We can take leftover bread, and then we can take that and make beer from that too. See, we'll just mess it all up. This is a complete bastardization of the entire food supply. They don't want anybody to know where anything comes from at all. That's why the USDA was removing their accuracy requirements for labels, and people with food allergies are freaking out. This is why Harvard, at the food ethics law professors at Harvard are writing the FDA and saying, you don't need to tell people that this isn't real beef. We can just call this lab-grown trash beef, right? You're cool with that? Because no one can really tell the difference at this point. And so if we've built a sufficiently advanced facsimile, we can just start lying, right? They literally just want to lie to you. And they petitioned because they called it free speech to lie. It's stunning. And I'm not making this up, ladies and gentlemen, when I talk about this wholesale technocratic attempt to take over the food supply and replace it with synthetic trash, upcycled nonsense. Look at this company called the Not Company, meaning it's not really dairy. It's not really milk. They call themselves a food replacement company. Reading from the article, TechCrunch, quote, in the past 5 years, VCs have thrown almost $10 billion to the aim of replacing traditional methods of growing and distributing the world's food. That's it, $10 billion to fund the replacement of agriculture. There's not hiding this at all. The Not Company, near Santiago, may seem like an unlikely rising contender in this multi-billion-dollar business of food replacement. They're not hiding it at all. It's a food replacement industry at this point to shut down the farms, to end animal agriculture, and to make you eat trash. There's a lot of money in that game when you're playing by the UN's rules. You get all sorts of awards and accolades. They call you a pioneer, a tech pioneer from the World Economic Foundation. But we all know it's just because you are enabling the satanic agenda to roll forward. So I'm going to leave it here, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen that the same people who are tipping the hat and winking about the Great Reset are now saying, hey, we're going to use our position here in California to reset agriculture. We're going to shut down the farms, institute mandatory testing, which is going to send the harvest labor home, depriving farms of the harvest labor they need. And of course, that means there's a series of effects that means. That means there's no food because they didn't harvest it. It's still there in the fields, as we read. That means that the farms aren't going to make revenue this year. And so a large number of them, especially after the terrible season last year and the continuing credit crunch, are going to go bankrupt. This is by design. They're pushing farmers and ranchers into bankruptcy. And then as we read from that article, actually, the most concerning, the farmers' biggest concern was that Whitmer had stuck a stick into the spoke of agriculture, into the patterns that these migrant workers follow, because they'll come back to your farm next year if they like you, and there's a pattern there. But now they're shaking it all up. And so this farmer said, my biggest concern, quote, are they going to come back next year? Or did I just lose my operational continuity? Is this it for me? And indeed, this farmer asking that question tells you everything you need to know. This is a shutdown, and one with lasting effects of our food supply. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Please spread the word about what's going on. This is an urgent situation, and it's going to take all of us growing food and spreading the word to get around it. We need to move to a situation where we are all growing food, a distributed model of food growing. And that's the future. All right, so please, if you like this report, you can find it and all my reports on iceagefarmer.com. I do thank you for sharing the message. If you appreciate this information, you can support this broadcast. There are a few ways to do that listed at iceagefarmer.com/support. And again, I thank you for helping me spread this message. Folks, let's go grow abundant, nutritive food, raise wonderful, amazing animals, and build great things. Thanks for watching. Be well.